Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you. We're going to use a 12 by 16 canvas. I'll be using a flat brush, but you can use a filbert if you want, or angle brush to begin the rocks. This will be the background that I created. So I'll begin with the top, and I'll be using black paint. I could have just as easily used dark brown, depends what color rocks you want. And I create shapes as I go on the top of what are going to become plenty of rocks. And I'll be doing plenty of rocks so you can get a feel on how to do rocks. Hopefully this will be very useful to you. Okay, I'm creating the shapes here. You notice with the flat brush, there we go. And go down. I'm going to let them connect. We'll continue with the black paint, and then I'm going ahead and now I'll exchange to a 1.5 inch brush. Could be any flat brush. I use a cheap brush, one that I bought from Home Depot. You can also buy them at Walmart. They're not very expensive. And I'll be tapping. So I'll be tapping till I fill the bottom of what it's going to be the background or the shadows of the rocks. You'll see what I mean as I go on. Just keep tapping till you fill the bottom. I would wait for about 10 or 15 minutes until I feel that it's fairly dry before I proceed with the next colors. Now the next colors are going to be grays, different grays, including a blue gray, to create the perspective of the illusion of rocks. The key word is illusion. I think I'll add some rocks up here. Wait. Make that kind of elevated rocks. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to be using most of the time the angle brush that I'm showing here. And from time to time I use the filbert brush. You can use either one. I prefer to use the angle brush. And what I'm going to do is create a very light gray to start with. Identify as if the sun is coming from the sky, from the left side of the sky. And the light gray is going to represent the light hitting the front, as I'm showing here, the front of the rock. Every time I add gray, I'm creating a rock. Remember that the black that will be left at the end will be the shadows or the dark areas of these rocks, meaning that the light gray will be the front of the rocks, as I'm doing here. Create different shapes. Make sure that all the shapes are different sizes. You don't want it to be all the same size and all the same shapes. I'll be redefining some of these shapes with the light gray. But for now, it gives me an idea where I'm going to be putting the rocks. Every time I put a gray down, that will probably represent the front of a rock. Sometimes I may do like a triangle, an oval shape, a long triangle. I may even do a rectangle. And the sun is hitting, and wherever the sun is hitting, that's where I'm going to put the light gray. And later on, I may even lighten some of that light gray by adding a little more white to it. Again, I remind you that not always are the rocks totally gray. Sometimes they have brown in them or almost purplish colors. So you decide what colors you want to use. In this, in creating these rocks, I'm going to be using grays. Now I'm putting the light gray wherever I think the sun is hitting. And you can see why the top was important. The shapes on the top with the black that I used. I'm taking my time here so you can see how I create the various shapes. A lot of this black will disappear and you end up with a lot of different grays, at least 3 or 4 different gray colors. It'll be up to you to decide how big you want these rocks to be. I'm creating small rocks to give you an opportunity to see the various shapes, but I could just as easily create boulders, but I will not here because I do want to show you primarily rocks. And you can see as I'm working this, you can see that it's every time I create a rock, I try to create a different shape. If it looks too similar to the one I did previously, I change the look of that gray. You're looking at the primary stage of creating the rocks. And you also notice that there's still a lot of black. And eventually as I create the rocks with the different grays, a lot of that black will disappear. The bottom of the rocks will not be as bright because the sun is not hitting as hard in that area. So I use a little darker gray. And I can just create the darker gray by adding a little more black. You don't want to add too much black, otherwise you're going to end up with a very extremely dark gray. And you do not want that. you can now see that it's beginning to look like rocks. But this is just the beginning. I would call this phase 2. The black was phase 1, the light grays phase 2, and the later details that I create will be phase 3. How much detail you have will depend on you as the person painting the rocks. In my case, I'm going to do quite a bit of detail so you can get a real good feeling on how these rocks are created. I've decided to add a little color to these rocks. I'm adding a little bit of blue to create a blue-gray color. So it's white, black, and blue. You don't want it to be too bluish, but just enough to have a blue-gray color. And keep adding rock shapes. The blue-gray will be the side of the rocks where the sun is not hitting as hard. As I put the blue-gray, I'm imagining what this rock is going to look like. I'm starting to shape that rock. You can see the black color diminishing as I add the different grays. But you have to remember that each color represents a different area. This blue-gray represents the side of the rocks. Where the sun is not hitting as hard. You always have to keep whatever the light source is, whether it's a light in a house or the sun, flashlight, whatever, you need to keep that in mind. That's what's going to help you decide where you put the different grays.
smoke court with rich.
Once you finish putting the amount of gray that you want and you feel that you're ready to do the finishing touch, which would be the details or to reshape a particular rock or improve a particular rock, I'll go ahead and in this case go a little faster this area, because this gives you a pretty good idea on how to finish these rocks.
Come try Sonny's original smoked pork with ribs.
Now if you notice, I went really detailed. I did a lot of little rocks, but you could make them much bigger than what I did here. As I did on the left side, here's an up-close view of what these rocks look like when you finish. You can see more of the details here. I'll consider this a finished product at this point. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you.